Good afternoon, everybody. I have a favor to ask you. Those people in the back, if you don't mind, could you just, move up a bit so I feel like we're having an intimate discussion? If you don't mind. Excellent. Thank you so much for humoring me. So my name is Michael Moite. No, I'm not related to that guy. And I'm going to be taking you through the session on Oracle data security. And don't worry, it's not going to be a very technical discussion. So the way we're going to do it is I will spend about 25 minutes talking to you about it, and then I'm going to invite my co-presenter up on the stage. His name is Joe, and he's going to have a session of his own. Then the two of us are going to take a seat over there, and we'll take questions from you. So if you do have some questions during the session, just hold off on asking them, and then once Joe and I take a seat, then we can, have the questions. So he and I will take the questions jointly. So this is a very, very special moment for me, and I'm honored that you're here, because the last time I spoke to a live audience was before the lockdown started. It was actually in Kampala. As you all may have heard, there are some things that are going on, perhaps not so good, but it's good to have you here. And like I said, it's an honor. And yeah, so let's get on with it. Okay. So like I said, I'm going to be taking you through the Oracle Data Security Solutions. My name is Michael Moite. I'm with Oracle. I've been with the organization for about 13 years. And I'm going to be taking you through Oracle Data Security. So first we'll start with what is happening in the industry currently. And these are some things that you may or may not be aware, but what I'm going to be showing is actually in the public domain. I think the biggest thing that's happening right now is that there are a lot of ransomware attacks. You have to have been hiding under a rock not to have heard that some companies have had their data locked up or encrypted, and then somebody has demanded that they pay a ransom. So what I was actually showing is something that happened to an organization that I had, I don't know whether it's the good fortune or misfortune to interact with, but they were the victim of this ransomware that you can see here. So basically, they called us and said their files had been encrypted. Could we help them to recover their data? And when we started having the discussions with them, something became apparent. The first discussion that we had was really just talking about the ransomware that had taken place. And what was not lost to me is the fact that the initial session we spoke with the IT manager only. So he's the one who came on the Zoom call because it was a remote session. And we had the first discussion. The second discussion, he was joined by the CFO. Now, who can tell me why he was joined by the CFO or Chief Financial Officer? I'll tell you why. See, when an organization gets attacked by ransomware, there are financial implications. So, for example, for this particular organization, their customers could not access their data, which meant, or their services, which meant that they were losing business. And when an organization starts losing business, revenue, then the CFO gets involved, because now we're talking about the company not getting the revenue that it should be getting. Of course, it also suffers from reputational damage. Okay, so if you look at what I'm showing you here is that there have been a lot of breaches. What I'm showing here is what in the year 2020. 2021, I mean, it just exploded. And then, so you can see here on the screen some of the companies that have been hit by ransomware. Some of them are familiar to you. And then closer to home, you can see some of the organizations that have been affected by security breaches. And always, whoever is trying to access this information is really interested in getting some money out of it. So it's for financial gain. I will not tell you the organization that I was interacting with that had been hit by ransomware, but it's right there on the screen. It's also in the information is the public domain. And what saddened me about it is that had they followed best practices in implementing the solution that they had, they would probably have been able to recover their data and also continue offering the services that they're supposed to be offering. So unfortunately, it took a bit longer than it should have. It also involved them having to acquire additional tools to spend money in order to bolster their security. But they could have averted or at least controlled some of the damage by having followed some best practices. So what is also happening in the world is that there are a lot of regulations that are coming into play. And typically when you have standards and regulations, they force organizations to acquire more tools to comply. For example, if it's a financial organization, a bank, for example, that is offering a credit card with maybe MasterCard or Visa, or IBM DB2 or even Postgres DB. So we want to know, how do hackers attack a database? So that's your database right there. It is used for holding very critical information. Typically, there are users who are accessing that database via an application. So an application could be maybe a customer relations management system or an ERP, enterprise resource management system. So if an application is written poorly, then it can be exploited. Somebody can come in here and put some malicious commands here that allow them to connect to this database and get information from there. Of course, if somebody manages to get inside the network, your network, they can also try to access some sensitive data via the network. So in this instance, they attack the network. Okay? They may even bypass the production database and try and go to your test and development environments. And I think you will agree with me here that the test and development environments are typically not as secure as this main database. So if somebody, or even somebody internally, it doesn't have to be an external threat actor. It could be somebody internal who is disgruntled and has access to this development environment or test environments. Because as we said, sometimes you have some data, production data or sensitive data that is stored here. Okay? So once we now have a good idea of how threat actors or bad guys target the database. At Oracle, we have developed what we call the security zones of control. And the approach here is, first of all, of course, we are talking about your data in your organization. They say data is the new oil. Now I heard that data is also the new oil for artificial intelligence systems because they consume a lot of data. So typically, your data is stored in your database, obviously for your organization. It's a very valuable asset. But just as much as it is a valuable asset, it is also a source of risk. Why do I say that? Because there are also people who want to get a hold of that data and misuse it. And that is why it poses a risk to your organization. Okay? So the first thing that we advise the customers to do, okay, before we get there, of course we have users that need to access the applications or access the database via applications. The applications are the ones that connect to the database. Of course, you want users to connect to the database or the applications to connect for authorized business operations as per your policies. So the first thing that we do is we advise our customers to assess the current state of the database from a security perspective. So you assess whether it's configured as per best practices, whether the users who are accessing the database have the appropriate permissions. So for example, if I was a developer and I had access to certain databases, then I moved to support. Ideally, where an organization is functioning properly from a security perspective, I should be able to go, I should not have as much privilege as I had to the database when I was a developer. In other words, I should have just enough access for me to perform support duties, but the other permissions that I had before should be removed. Okay? That's the best practice. So we advise customers to assess the current state of the database. Then we also advise customers to be able to detect when they maybe they attempts to access the data, especially when those attempts violate the policies that the organization has put in place. That is very, very critical. Okay, then the other thing that we do is we also advise our customers or share mechanisms or best practices of how to prevent users from accessing information that they should not access. Okay? So how do we do this? First thing that we do is we advise our customers to run a tool that allows them to do what we call a security assessment. So of course we realize some of our customers run the database on their data centers or in their data centers. Some customers may choose to run it on the cloud. Okay? So for those customers who are running it on premise, we have this database security assessment tool, or DBSAT, which we offer to our customers at no additional cost. So any customer who is running an Oracle database, Enterprise Edition and above, we offer these security assessment at no cost. And it's very easy to utilize, and then it outputs some reports in HTML format, text format, that customers can look at that report and say, we found a configuration issue here. This is how to remediate it. This is how to fix it. We found that there are some users that have maybe some privileges they shouldn't be having. This is how to fix that. So this is a tool that helps customers to establish what we call a security baseline. Okay? Now, supposing a customer is running our Oracle database on the cloud or subscribing to what we call database as a service. Then we have this other tool here called DataSafe, this DataSafe tool allows customers to, do periodic assessments to assess, to get a sense of the security of their database. Is it configured appropriately? If they've already had some configurations, is there a configuration drift? In other words, is there a departure from perhaps the best practices from a configuration perspective? Then they are given steps or best practices to fix that. So in both instances, these solutions that I'm talking about here, customers can utilize them at no additional cost because we are helping the customers to minimize risk. In this case, security risk. So in some instances, customers will want to, once they have run the security assessments and set a security baseline, then they may want to go a step further. Perhaps a regulation has come into play that requires them to get additional tools to fix their security. So in this instance, then we have additional tools that we can offer them, for example, to encrypt some sensitive data. And once they encrypt the data, there are what we call encryption keys that they need to store securely. So again, we have a tool that we offer them for that. Okay? We also need to do what we call separation of duties. Let's say you work in an organization where you have the ability to order for a laptop. When you order for a laptop, you should not be the same one approving the payment of the laptop, because that introduces the risk that fraud could occur. The same way, in a database, there should be that separation of duties. So you may have a powerful guy or girl who takes care of the database, but this person needs to have separation, so they need to be able to do their job, which is keeping the database running, but they shouldn't be seeing sensitive data in the database. And that separation of duties can be achieved with some of the tools that we have here. We also say, trust, but verify that people are doing the right thing. So you need to audit activities of users in the database. And you can collect that audit information and store it in a separate location so that later on, should something happen, when you're conducting an investigation, then you have a way to do what we call forensics. You can go back to a repository and see, okay, this person issued a command that, it's towards the end of the month. This person issued a command that increased their salary so that when the payroll runs, you get where I'm going with that. Who didn't get it? Yes, so you need to audit such activities. You need to be able to know when something has happened, perhaps even get an alert, get some reports. Maybe some auditors like visiting you every year. They demand reports. You can generate reports from that system and share with them, showing how people have been utilizing the database. How am I doing for time? You know, I like talking. Am I doing okay? Okay, I should speed up, I'm being told. But we are good. By the way, are we together so far? Have I lost anybody? Okay, I have not put anybody to sleep. That's a good thing. Thank you. And so I was saying we need to be able to audit the activities of users. And we also need to be able to prevent people from misusing data in test and development environments. So we have some tools in Oracle that can be used to anonymize data in test and development environments. What I mean by that is we can scramble the data in development and test environments so that my friend, the developer there, can use the data, test to his heart's content, but cannot see sensitive information that they can't misuse it. All these elements together form what we call now the maximum security zones. Of course, now here I'm showing all the different solutions that can be used to assist users to meet the things that I was talking about. You know, whether we're talking about auditing the activities of users or anonymizing data that is in test and development environments, or even encrypting sensitive data in the database. When you put all these together, then you have what we call the maximum security architecture from Oracle. So I will just leave you with this. Okay? Thank you very much. I shall now invite my co-presenter, Joe, to come up to the stage, take you through his session. Then after that, he and I will get together and go through a Q&A. Thank you very much.
ones who are mandated to take care of the .ke domain namespace. The internet doesn't belong to anyone, we all know that, but there are bodies that have been put to regulate and control certain aspects of the internet. And the diagram I have here is basically how the internet ecosystem looks like. We have the IP addressing, we have the regulatory bodies, the governance bodies and the policy development bodies, then the technical layer that deals with the infrastructure and standards and all that. So the mother organization is called ICANN. ICANN is ICANN, that is International Corporation for Assigned Names and Numbers. They are the ones who appoint specific organizations to manage the DNS space and the IP addressing. So there are two types of what we call top-level domain administrators. We have the generic top-level domain administrators and the country code top-level domain administrators. So generic top-level domain administrators, and then my next slide you'll see, are the guys who manage the .com, the .orgs, the .net, the .gov. There are specific organizations that manage that, and those type of domains are called generic top-level domains. Then the other is called CCTLD, country code top-level domains, and every country has a unique code that represents the identity. For Kenya, it's .ke, South Africa is .za, US could be .us, Saudi Arabia could be .sa. So what ICANN does is that it appoints a specific organization to manage the country code for that specific country. So in Kenya, we are the ones who've been appointed as Kenic to manage the .ke domain space. As I proceed, so as I mentioned, we have the generic top-level domains and the country code top-level domains. So every country has its own unique code, and as Kenic, we are the ones who manage it. Nigeria has an organization called NIRA. South Africa has ZADNA, and every country has its own. So, as I mentioned, the internet is not owned by anyone, but there are specific bodies that have been placed to manage. So, from a DNS perspective, a domain name service, we have, okay, of course, ICANN has appointed the registry operators. Then below the registry operators are what we call registrars. Now, registrars are the companies that provide hosting for you. They're the ones who build the website for you and provide you the email services that you need to operate. So basically a domain by itself doesn't really help you. So you need to approach the registrar, the hosting companies that will provide you email service, hosting, web hosting services and web development services. Then we have resellers, that's mid-level, I'll talk about it. Then registrants. Registrants are the owners of the domain, and since we are talking matters data, I'll get to why registrants are very critical in this space. So what most registries operate on is on a 3R model. The 3R model is a registry, registrar, registrant, as I've mentioned. So the registry is a regulating body. In this particular example, this is Kenic. The registrars are the various companies that provide hosting services and provide you with other web services that you need. Then the registrant is you, the final user, the final owner of the domain. So the domain belongs to you and it is your property. One of the critical aspects I want to talk about is when you're registering the domain or for whatever domains you have, it is very critical that to ensure that the correct information about that domain is kept. Because what we've noticed is that a lot of registrars and resellers register the domain on behalf of the end user, but they put in their own information, their own contact, administrative and billing information. Right now, there's a Data Protection Act of 2019. And it requires that if that domain belongs to you, you have to ensure that the correct information, the correct contact information is stored. And they're going to start cracking down very soon. I wish we had a representative from the Data Commissioner's office that, yes, they have expanded more on this. But as data controllers, because what the Data Protection Act mentions is that There are three main parties. There's a data controller, there's a data processor, and then there's the data subject. So the data subject is you, the owner of the information. In this particular case, when it pertains to a domain, it's the contact information that is stored about you. The data processor is a registrar who collects the information on our behalf and then stores it to us as Kenic, who's the data controller. This is in matters domains. In different scenarios, data controllers are defined differently, but as you're all aware, my earlier colleagues who are here in the morning were discussing about how important it is to ensure that your data is secure. And we are getting to a level where whatever information you're putting out there on social media, I've seen a lot of parents posting or opening social media accounts for their kids. Those kids can see you when they grow up, asking you, why did you create for me an account? Because data is becoming the new currency, and whatever data you post out there is very critical. Even if you go to a compound or a building and you see CCTV cameras but no sign that tells you that this building is under CCTV maintenance, you have a right to question why they're collecting your data. And even when you go to government offices and they ask you for your ID and all that information, you have a right to inquire about why they're asking you for that data. So going back to Kenic, yes, so I've mentioned this. So these are some of the domain extensions we have, and they are specific to specific organizations. We have the .co.ke, which is for companies. We have the .emic.ke for individuals. We have .go.ke for government institutions, .ra.ke for NGOs, .ac.ke for institutions of higher learnings. These are colleges and universities. We have .ac.ke for primary schools and secondary schools, and then the other two extensions which are not too common. So I don't know whether we have any representatives from government agencies, but we have a great concern where the domain, the .go.ke extension is what is supposed to be used, but you find instances where government agencies are sending emails through their Gmail. And that is not really right, because if I was to send you an email from a Gmail and I send you another email from .go.ke, which one will be more legitimate? Which one will you trust is coming from the right source? So it's very important that you get to know this information so that when you want to register, say, a school, if it's a college, you know it's .ac.ke that you should go for. If it's a primary school or a secondary school, that's the specific extension that you should go for. So I'm not a marketer, I'm a techie, but in terms of why go for .ke, there's accessibility, availability, we have affordability. We've invested so much to ensure that the DNS service is accessible and it's available. Then, of course, you need to protect your brand online. We've had cases of what we call cyber squatting, where people are registering domains and purporting that it belongs to them. We've had even the Ministry of Health, even Nameless, the other day, Nameless the musician, his Instagram account was hacked. It's because he registered the domain but did not renew it on time. So it expired, then someone else registered the domain. But the emails he was using were tied to his domain name, the email for his social media accounts. So now that guy was asking to be paid to release the domain. So these are some of the various scenarios of why it is important to protect your brand and ensure that you secure your domain. And at the end of the day, when you buy Kenya, you build Kenya. I'm not a marketer, so I'll stop at marketing Kenic at that. But as we proceed, I'll mention a little bit about how the DNS industry looks like and some of the aspects that some of the issues that are happening. So the contact information I was referring to for domains, it's actually called WHOIS. And WHOIS is not an acronym, it's just how it's been, it's basically used to query who is the owner of this domain, the contact information, the administrative billing, and all that information. As I mentioned, I can delegate specific organizations to manage the DNS and IP addressing. So AFRINIC is Africa Network Information Center. It's based in Malaysia and in Mauritius, sorry. They're the ones who are tasked to issue and sell IP addresses for the African region. The other organizations, of course, LAPNIC and for the different continents, but Afrinic. So there's a few years ago, there have been a court case for Afrinic. There's a Chinese guy who sued Afrinic for how it was operating, and it's been a huge cause. It's been a very huge case, but as recent as last month, the case was resolved, and Afrinic's bank accounts had been frozen, but they were released. The other major technology around the internet ecosystem is IPv6. For the non-techies, IP addresses, of course, as I said, they're what the internet runs on, and what we've been operating since the beginning of the internet is called IP version 4, and those numbers are being depleted. That's why we're moving to what we're calling IP version 6. At some point, even Safaricom stopped using 07, and they've introduced 01. It's because there's only so much of those numbers that can be utilized until they get exhausted. Yes, Africa DNS Forum, we had it earlier in the year, and we'd like to invite all of you to attend. Most of these forums are online, the DNS forums, and different organizations across Africa get to interact and discuss matters about the internet, and not just the tech aspects, but policy development, regulations, and all that. Yes, universal acceptance, I don't want to dwell too much because this is a tech. It's a bit techy. Our developer here probably knows what universal acceptance is. With the growth of the internet, applications need to evolve to support all types of languages and all types of characters, not just ASCII codes, but you've seen some languages have letters like E or A with an apostrophe at the top. Currently, the internet doesn't support that. Not the internet, but applications don't support that. So universal acceptance is a concept and technology that will allow all these applications to be able to use the universal language. Yes. Sorry, let me go back here. Yes, I mentioned about the Data Protection Act. Yes, the other major thing that is happening in the DNS ecosystem is the launch of .Africa. You saw even Nation launched a Nation.Africa platform. Yes, Facebook Downtime, you're all aware, was it last month or the other month? Facebook had a downtime, and this was due to actually a DNS infrastructure issue on their system. So DNS is so critical that if a DNS infrastructure goes down, then the internet crashes. And you saw that they had a downtime of 6 hours. So even as Kenic, as I started by saying, we are part of critical internet infrastructure. So we have invested so much to ensure that our infrastructure is resilient, because if we go down, then it means a lot of internet services will be affected, including banking, even M-Pesa, and so many other internet applications that you use. Of course, my earlier colleague talked about cybersecurity aspects, so I don't need to dwell much on that. The other major thing maybe I'd emphasize on is cybersquatting, where we have domainers. This is where I register. I hear maybe Safaricom is about to launch a new product or a new brand, and that name gets leaked somewhere. As a domainer, what I'll do, I'll go register various domains under that name, under that brand, knowing that when they come looking for it, I will sell it back to them. So that's called cybersquatting, and such people are called domainers. Yes. He also mentioned about hacking and DDoS attacks, so I don't need to deal with that. So tying back to the cybersquatting issues, there's something we call domain disputes, where I can come and claim that this is my legitimate domain, but you're using, this is my brand, but you're using my domain. As Kenic, we do not have any policy restrictions towards what kind of name you can register, so it's open. There are those which you've reserved and they're not available. But if you decide to today go register safaricom.co.k, assuming it wasn't there, What we do is that we provide an arbitration process. In our website, you can see there is what we call ADRP, Advanced Dispute Resolution Policy, and it provides guidelines towards how we receive reports about a domain dispute and how we handle it. And what we've done is just to provide a stage for arbitration before letting the matter escalate to legal suits and all that. So if you come to us and present to us a legitimate domain dispute, we will connect you with the owner of the domain, the two parties plus the registrar. Then they will try and iron it out and agree. If not, then we advise them to go to arbitration. Yes, as I finish off, I'd like to mention that among the extensions I listed for what Kenic offers, there's a premium one we call .ke by itself, just .ke. Let's say safaricom.ke, without any .co.ke or anything. Those are premium domains. They're called second level domains. And as we speak right now, we started a domain auction process for those domains. They are very unique domains. These are like .mi.ke, ni.ke. A company like Nike might be interested in such a domain. So those are the type of premium domains that we've put on our auction platform. You can visit auction.kenic.ora.ke if you're interested. The domains are there and available for auction. The auction will be running until December. So thank you for your time. I hope I haven't spent too much. I'll invite my colleague back. So I can open the floor for any questions.
Yes.
An instance where someone is in the business of purchasing domains, right? And, holding and then selling them one by one. So for example, for us, I work at KBL, right? And whenever we have those, we call them national consumer promotions, the ones you scratch and win, or you peel the bottle top and win. So you have so many people collecting bottle tops and holding them and then, in the hope of winning something, right? But it's actually one unique person or one unique, has that ever happened?
Yes,
yeah.
Yes, it has happened, not once, but a lot of times. And we do not have any policy restrictions that prevent anyone from purchasing any domain. There are those which we have, of course, restricted, some with vulgar words or some which might be political. This is also in consultation with the Communication Authority. Yes, so but we have had instances where we have had culprits who've purchased domains. Let me not call them culprits because it's not illegal. But yeah, we have had such instances, and even when we opened up the auction, we've had a lot of people who've bidded and reserved some names, a lot of names for whatever purpose they need to do. Some of them are just to resell them. Yes.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
From your first slide, I think I saw that Kenic is an ungovernmental organization. Maybe you can highlight on that how you do business. And then number two is that I would want to know how you control the .go for the government agencies or public sector.
Okay, I'll start by the first question. Yes, Kenic is a non-for-profit organization. According to our memats, we are limited by guarantee. because we are not a government entity, and I know that is a notion that people get, because our offices are actually inside the Communications Authority, but we are an entirely independent entity, and we do not get any funding from any government institute, so that is why we are a non-for-profit organization. Okay, I hope that I've answered properly the first question. Is my answer satisfactory? Okay, all right. Then the second question is that how we regulate the .go.ke. So what we have done is that .go.ke can only be registered by ICTA, through ICTA. So you cannot just go to any registrar and register .go.ke. It's restricted. If I can go back to my slide, to that slide.
Kenya is well known for its digital infrastructure. It's well known for its ICT.
Sorry, just take me to the slides, please.
Kenya is well known.
Okay, but what I'm saying is the .go.ke domains can only be registered through the ICT authority, ICTA. So because you require to have to present a certificate from the specific ministry that you're claiming to belong to for the domain to be registered. And this is the same for .ac.ke. This is for academic institutions. You cannot just register a school domain with a .ac.ke or .ac.ke. We require you to present a certificate from the Ministry of Education showing legitimacy of that organization. Yes. Is any other question for me or to my colleague? Okay, so thank you. Maybe you can close.
Okay, thank you all very much. Appreciate the time for Joe and I to have a conversation with you, and enjoy the rest of the sessions. Thank you very much.
Kenya is well known for its digital infrastructure. It's well known for its ICT acumen. So at the backbone of that is domain names.
My name is Joel Karobio, the CEO of Kenya Network Information Center, Kenic. Kenic is the administrator, and we manage the country code top-level domain.ke, which is the allocated domain name for Kenya. And it's a two-letter wording, .ke, which symbolizes our country. And our purpose is to ensure that we have a stable registry that is up and running at all times, 24/7, and ensuring that anyone who's on our namespace is then able to transact, trade, communicate within the domain namespace. Just a couple of benefits that and value propositions that .ke brings to the table is the fact that you have that unique identifier. It is accessible, it gives you optimization, and lastly, it's the pride of our country. So it's one of those domains that it's something that every Kenyan should have. It's something that you would be proud to say, I am Kenyan, I have a Kenyan domain name. We are stable, our infrastructure is good, our infrastructure is supported. We've also instituted 24-hour support, so that if there are any registrars or registrants who have any challenges, then they are able to then reach out to us. So from a stability perspective, I think we are good. We now are looking at the registry from a futuristic perspective. What is the next stage for this registry? What else can we do in terms of supporting the internet ecosystem to ensure that we grow? And our vision is to be at the top in terms of a model registry that can actually show that we have put in place security measures that actually assist anyone to feel secure when they are online. We are looking for cutting-edge innovation. We are looking for cutting-edge opportunities for us to infuse within our business to make sure that the people who are dealing with us as a domain name and are dealing with the registry feel that not only am I coming to buy a domain, but I'm coming for other services that make me understand how my presence online looks like. One of the visions of the digital economy is digitally enabled citizenry, which means we want everyone to be digitally enabled. Domain names and the online presence is one of those digitally enabled, because then you dovetail from just having a website to actually having an e-commerce site that you can trade with. So we are part of this journey in Kenya that allows for people to actually make a living out of domains. As opposed to the registry, which is Kenic dealing directly with the registrant, there's a halfway point, which is another ecosystem of people who are making money by selling domains. And we currently have about 200 of those registrars with us. So when we tick these boxes within the government saying that we are an employer of choice, and we've also created employment opportunities, Kenic ranks up there. When you want to become a registrar, we have a very simple registrar application process, which you just fill in a form. You will submit that to the office. We shall then review based on some of the questions that we've asked in that form, and then we shall give our recommendation. You must also be recognized by the Communications Authority. And we're even encouraging that registrars come from different counties. We find that our business today, a lot of our registrars are in Nairobi based. As much as we talk about being a digital economy that is borderless, we also want registrars in different counties to also register so they can serve their own communities, because they know the challenges of their communities. Currently, Kenic has about 9 extensions that we use. And depending on the kind of business or the kind of individual and what you want to do, there's an extension fee. So for example, if it's companies, we then give you the .co.ke. If you're looking to be a blogger, .me.ke, which is .me.ke. So it talks about you. If you're an NGO, you can actually do .or, which then signifies a non-profit organization. At university level, there's .ac.ke, which is for university. .sc.ke is for secondary schools. Very confident to tell each and every Kenyan that your information with Kenic is as safe as gold. For us at Kenic, we believe that through having a Kenyan domain name, it is that passport that you require. It is that great identifier that you have. So we are appealing that if you can, and we would want you to, is to register your own domain name, whether it's for your business or your personal interactions with people. Ensure that it's anchored on .ke.